Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to our Open Office Hours series for NetSuite. Our tip today is NetSuite Release 20.2 features. Thank you again for your support in this series, and we'll get started in everybody's time. Before we get into the actual features, I'm gonna walk everybody to the new release process and how it works, so that everybody's on the same page and understands the NetSuite process. Basically, as everybody knows, NetSuite does 2 major upgrades per year, and they're doing ongoing minor and maintenance upgrades during the year. There are 4 phases, so each of you are going to participate or be part of a specific phase. And if you are in a standard tier, you will be scheduled by NetSuite in one of these 4 phases. If you are in an advanced tier or an upgraded tier, which basically it's an option that you get with NetSuite to increase performance and scalability and other factors, then you get an option at that point to select when you're upgraded. Obviously, that performance tier has a little bit of a cost, so it's a give and take decision. One of the things that NetSuite has said is that they are planning in future releases to be able to allow you to change your phase with certain restrictions, but there will be more flexibility on when you're upgraded, so you have more control over that and it doesn't affect your business processes. The upgrades usually happen on a Saturday morning, between Friday and Saturday. They usually take about 2 hours, and most of the time they are seamless to you. If some of you may know, and we'll get into NetSuite for that, you'll get a release preview account. We'll walk you through those steps so you can test and see the new features before you're upgraded. Also do some regression testing with any scripts or workflows that you may be nervous that are not going to work in the new release, test new functionality, etc. And then you get upgraded, in one of these schedules. So with that said, I'm going to log into NetSuite. I'm already logged into an account with NetSuite and when the new release process starts, NetSuite displays this portlet in your dashboard, everybody's dashboard, and you always have the option of removing it or saving it. But that we covered a few weeks ago, if you remove it, you can always add it back, and it's going to be there. It's always there, updated twice a year as your new releases are coming out. And this is a very useful portlet because it gives you a lot of information, and certainly suggests that people read it, but we're all very busy and don't get a chance. And that's why we're trying to do this webinar today, to give you some insight into some of the coolest features and more applicable features. But this will tell you when you're going to be upgraded, the dates and the time when you're going to be upgraded. So to give you some highlights on some of the key things that are coming out. They'll give you videos for the overviews of the new release, a release preview login, and I'll come back to this in a second. It'll give you release notes, and I certainly suggest that you review this in our poll during the registration process. Probably maybe 20% of the people had read the release notes, and there is a lot to learn, but I certainly suggest that you go through the release notes and highlight the areas that you are interested in and see if there's anything that would affect you in your new release. And it gives you a lot of information here. There's a couple hundred pages of release notes. These are updated frequently until the release is completed. They're always tweaking things. You see, this is version 5. So I certainly suggest that you keep up and download it from NetSuite. You can always keep a local copy if you want. There's a sneak peek. There's a guide, and there's going to be training resources. So if you look at the training resources, this is another very good resource where NetSuite goes, and not for every feature, but their top 10-15% of the changes and new features, they will record videos. They are between 10 minutes and an hour, covering different topics, and they'll do a demo of that functionality and also the rationale to having that functionality released, limitations, et cetera, et cetera. As always, they have some caveats and some things that they may not be fully functional already. Every new release, you always have to be cognizant and know that they may have some bugs, as any new software would, but it's always a good resource that you can find. And as you can see, it takes you basically to Suite Answers. So if you go to Suite Answers and you're familiar with Suite Answers, the first thing you're going to see on the videos link is going to be the 20.2 new release previews, and it gives you all this functionality. So in today's session, I'm going to cover at a high level some of these, but you have a lot of resources and the videos to do it. Not all the information is still in Suite Answers as far as being able to find articles, complete articles. They're still working on that and probably will for the next couple of months. I'll stop here quickly to say that if at any point there are any questions, please use the Q&A window to ask those questions so that we can answer them real time. As you can see, there is a release preview login. It used to be that everybody had access to that. Now, in order to get the release preview, you have to opt in. And the way that you and an account can opt in is you go to Setup, Company, and you scroll down and come to Release Preview. And you basically opt in here. In this account, I already opted in, but just like you do the sandbox, your administrator would have access to do that. And then once you get the release preview requested and the request is complete, usually takes about a day. It took about a day for me, maybe two sometimes, depending on the volume. Then what you're going to get is that every user that's logged into or that has access to NetSuite, what you're going to get is you're going to get a new, for every role you have, a new role in your list with RP next to it. And you know that that's the release preview. So I'm going to switch over to that. Close a couple of windows here. And as you can see, it looks the same. It's NetSuite. It's your NetSuite with your data, with the snapshot of your data, very close to when you requested the release preview. Again, just like a sandbox is, you can see this, and you'll get your login with your dashboard, everything you have in the new account. So your data gets ported over, and then you have the option of, setting up or enabling the features like you would in any account. So obviously, you'll need your administrator to participate. Most of you on this call are not administrators, but you'll need the administrator to participate in some of the features in the release preview if you want to test them. The release preview, you have it, I believe, is for 60 days before your release is completed. So you do have a limited window, but it should be enough time for you to be able to do some testing and some playing around with it. So let me switch back to the PowerPoint and go through to the features, and I will go through some of these features in the account. Some of them I'll just talk to and point out that they exist and give you some background on them, and let you on your own time, and if they are applicable to you, do some more research, or you can ask questions in the Q&A window, or you can email me later. Any way works, but there's certainly with 100 release features, it's going to be hard to get into all of them. So I've tried to cover every area except very technical areas in this presentation, and what I thought would be more useful and in a way cool for the users. These are to me as a consultant, some of the things were pretty cool. So we'll start with accounting. Accounting, they had just accounting is a very mature product within NetSuite. There's not a lot of things they can improve. So the improvements there are less exciting. First one, and by the way, the things that are in red are not necessarily new features, but are enhancements. So that'll be the difference between a new feature and something that existed that they have been improved on. So on the GL impact, printed enhancements, it's sort of a minor thing, but what they've done is if you go to a action, for example, if I go to an invoice and I open an invoice, hopefully this will behave with decent speed. If you open an invoice, you've always had the option of coming to the GL impact if you have that permission and looking at the GL impact of a transaction. It's helpful if you have multiple items that hit multiple accounts and you want to make sure that it did, and you want to be able to do what's the impact of this transaction, the debits and credit for audit, etc. So multiple reasons that you might want to do that, and you can always do it by coming to Actions, GL Impact, and this shows you this GL Impact screen, which shows you the debits and your credits and all the different segments that that are applicable to that transaction. If you have GL numbering, it would show you this here. And you always have the option of printing it, but the printout was kind of plain and boring and not attractive. So what they've done is they've enhanced it with advanced PDF. So when you now print this, it prints in another window, and it prints with some better formatting, right? So nothing too exciting, but a little bit more presentable if you're presenting working papers for an auditor or to your boss, and you wanna have it more presentable than what they used to have. So that's sort of a minor impact there. The other impact that they've had is that for fixed assets, they no new functionality, but they've improved on the performance on reports. As you all may know, fixed assets is a suite app. It's embedded in the code, but it is a suite app like other suite apps. It was a product that we purchased years ago, and as such, it does run some outside process, not outside of NetSuite, but different processes that core NetSuite, and that means that every time you run a depreciation or report, you get that processes window. So they've improved performance there. Now being part of Oracle, they've been able to obviously dedicate more resources to everything, and you'll notice that every new release is coming with more and more functionality, and some of it is things that you would have expected for a while. Moving on to account setup and maintenance, one thing that's never been available and they've made available now, and again, some of these things are exciting for administrators, is the ability to have that administrator role visible. Administrator role was a role that you could never see what it had. And a lot of people try to recreate roles starting with the administrator and taking things away. And even though you can't customize it, at least NetSuite has now given the option of having that administrator role visible. So for those of you that are administrators, you can actually see all the permissions, and if you're wondering about something, you can kind of replicate. It's a manual process, but you can replicate the permissions of an administrator if you want to do so. And one of the reasons why this is useful is that they are, and I'll talk about it later, but they are taking away the full access role. There is a role, if you go to this role, it's called full access, and that role is now hidden. You cannot select it anymore. And in 2021.1, they will actually disable that role. So if anybody is using that full access role, they won't be able to use it anymore. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is that they've done improvements to the PMI requests, and I just highlighted this because PMI, or personal information management, the privacy information to comply with GDPR and California rules. It's something that not a lot of customers use or even know exists. And if you're going through those issues, the PMI process, there is a process that you can go through this list mass update and remove personal information, and there is a request process where you can basically, through this form, select if it's a customer, what fields you want to hide, and eventually submit it for approval. And when that gets approved, you can even select what you want this to look like. So if I wanted to remove, for example, on a customer, I want to hide the last name, I can do that, and it will be replaced by by a message here that you can customize, but the standard is PMI removed upon request. So maybe date of birth you want to hide, and you have the options of hiding it in the history and the field, so it's not visible to anyone, or only in the history, in the field, in the system nodes. So I just thought that this was something that I never used before, and it might be useful for some of you. Moving on to the administration roles, a couple of things here, a couple that I'll show. One of them is in the future, in 20.2, you're going to have the login page is going to look a little bit different. So today, when you go to netsuite.com, you get that login page with the login on the top left. In the future, what they're going to have, when NetSuite is coming up with, is an enterprise login page like this, that is more, it's a little bit cleaner. So you'll be able to bookmark this page, and this is what you're gonna get, right? A little bit cleaner. And then for your customers, if you use the customer center, which is the ability to give your customers access to NetSuite to review sales orders, even enter sales orders, pay invoices. So if you're familiar with that, they're coming up with a new login page for the customer center that will have your logo. So it looks a little bit more professional, less NetSuite, more about your company. So in this case, we have the Crowe logo here. So I thought those things are going to be really cool. This login actually already works. I've used it earlier, but it's not published yet. It's not rolled out. In the future, it will be rolled out when you go to system.netsuite.com. It's going to bring you here. And when you go to the public page, it'll take you to the public page. Today, they're sort of one and the same. The other things that are available for administrators are the ability to do, they're tracking now logouts on the Audit Trail. So the Audit Trail allows you to be able to track login of people in the account into your account. So it used to be where you could log in, but it would not track logging out. So if you're looking at somebody's, in these times when people are working from home, if you want to track if people are, working from home, when they log into NetSuite, you could track that, but it wouldn't track when they logged out. And now you can track when they log out or when they switch roles. So just more information at your fingertips that NetSuite is exposing to the users. And the last thing here is just record customization beta. And if some of you went to, if some of you went to Suite World a couple of years ago, they teased that they were going to expose the ability to customize any field in NetSuite, not only the custom fields. And you can do in the form, as you know, you can change the label of a custom field of a mandatory of a native NetSuite field. You can through a workflow, you can make it mandatory if you want to, but it was something that you had to work a little bit harder at. Now, what they've exposed, and this is a beta, is that they've made this visible to you, where you can take a field, you can take something like an inventory item, and you can see all the fields that are standard, all the fields that are customized. You can see fields that are from applications that you've installed. Obviously, you can always create a new field like you would through customization. But if you look at the standard fields, then you can take a standard field like, for example, average cost or class, and you can make it mandatory without having to write a workflow. Same thing for all the sublist fields, that are in the sublist, for example, price levels or user nodes. And this you can go into them and make changes in some of them. So I think this is very useful to make NetSuite continues to make it very easy to customize your system. So those are a little bit sort of administrative, kind of boring things maybe, but then I will get into some of the most exciting and I think most requested changes. First, in banking, NetSuite, if you came from QuickBooks, a lot of people, and we certainly go through this with our clients, they come from QuickBooks, and QuickBooks is connected to their bank, and QuickBooks auto downloads transactions from the bank, et cetera, and that they can code them. And NetSuite was always lagging behind. And in 20.1, NetSuite released the Bank Feeds Suite app, which you can use to synchronize your bank transactions into NetSuite, daily, and then have matching rules to match transactions to NetSuite transactions to improving your bank reconciliation process. So that's been around now for 6 months. What NetSuite has come up with now is a couple of new things. One is corporate card connectivity. So they've extended the ability to download transactions to your corporate card, and you have to go through the same setup, and I'll quickly go through it in a second, just in case you want to see where that is. And so you can, if you have corporate cards with employees, and it facilitates expense reports, for example, because transactions are now coming into NetSuite, and you can then just code them or approve them without having to re-enter everything manually. And those of you that use Expensify or Concur, I mean, that's one of the benefits that Expensify and Concur had over NetSuite, and those benefits are, quickly going away. And the other thing that they've done is they have worked with NetSuite, with American Express, to create an American Express connectivity. So it's a little bit different than if you have your bank and you have a Chase card, for example. They have a specific Suite app for American Express that gets configured as a Suite app, and it's like a bank feeds parser for specific to American Express. That is not available in the suiteapp.com marketplace, but it will be soon. There's a demo on this specific functionality on those videos that I showed before. And finally, they're given the ability to auto-create transactions. And what that means is that if you have transactions that are coming from the bank that don't have a match in NetSuite, you can, charges from the bank, bounce check fee, ACH fee, all those things, you could have NetSuite automatically create a NetSuite transaction and post it to the GL. So you don't have to then code everything, right? You can create rules, and NetSuite can create automatically some rules about that. So that's certainly something to look into. And all that is, if you go back to the application, if you go to set up accounting and financial institution, this is where all that is being set up now when you're setting up all the bank integration. So I already have a couple set up on not in this account, sorry. So you set up a financial institution. So, bank feed, you give it a name. Sorry, sometimes my computer freezes, so let me reload this. And then you save it. And then, you come and you add your financial institution here. So every time you add an institution, you create a format. Let's say this is going to be, the Bank of America feed you want it for bank reconciliation, or you can do it for corporate card expenses. This is where you select this. You do say whether you want it as a manual import or as a feed, and then you select, the parser, and then you're going to get an option here that is going to, just like you do with QuickBooks or with Quicken or with Mint, go to your bank account and ask you to log into your bank account. And then you'll map that account with your NetSuite account. And after that, it'll start the configuration process, the import, the bank feeds process. So there's a lot of information about this in Suite Apps. Like I said, I won't be able to go into everything, but this is where you would get that started. And again, you can do it with bank feeds, corporate card feeds. And once that is set up, there is this code mapping option where you can start mapping and creating those rules to map and how to create transactions in NetSuite. Quickly moving to employee management. Whether you have Suite people or not, there's some employee management things in NetSuite that are coming up. And one of them is expense report policies. And I don't remember if I exactly where I put that. It's going to be here under accounting. I don't have that here. Your expense report policies, where you can create policies for expense reporting so that it kind of controls your expenses as they're being entered. You can define a start and end date of the policy, who it applies to, what department, what location. If it applies to a specific customer, maybe the customer doesn't accept meals for more than $30. That's the policy for that project that is going to be reimbursed. So you can define the policies and you can make it applicable to specific employees, if they're going to be, limited, what's the amounts, maybe per day, per expense report. So you can create all those policies as part of your implementation of the expense management functionality of NetSuite. Allows you to have those in NetSuite, where before you have expense report policies, but NetSuite could accept anything, or you have to create workflows and rules to be able to control that outside of the system. And the other thing that I won't be able to show is if you have suite people, they've added a feature for performance management. So suite people keeps improving. Suite people, as you may know, is the HR system that works alongside NetSuite and also alongside suite people payroll if you have two separate functionalities. But suite people allows you to do onboarding, some recruiting with integrations with third parties, and then it allows you to do performance management besides just the kudos functionality that it used to have, true performance management. So you can do your performance evaluations and track that all within NetSuite. Moving on, we'll talk about intercompany and internationalization. So NetSuite is making great progress here. If you're using One World, especially if you have international functionality with One World, that they've introduced is intercompany framework functionality, where you can now, if you're, again, a lot of these features are for administrators that affect eventually end users. But if you come now to set up an accounting, it used to be where intercompany functionality or preferences were within accounting preferences, a lot of them. Now you have an intercompany preferences menu option here, where you can set up specific, separately from the accounting preferences. Some of these fields already existed, but you can define what your receivables accounts and payable accounts are going to be, how you track intercompany income when you have, cross-subsidiary fulfillments between subsidiaries, how you want to, if you do cross charges, and this is a functionality that's coming up when you're doing cross-subsidiary fulfillment, which is basically the functionality of you have a sales order in one subsidiary, but you want the other subsidiary to fulfill it because they're the ones that have inventory. So instead of doing an inventory transfer or transfer order, you do that cross-subsidiary fulfillment. NetSuite automates the accounting, the do from, etc. behind the scenes and fulfills that inventory from that other subsidiary. Now they have functionality to be able to, automate some of those charges behind the scene. You can classify those by subsidiary. You can also define transfer pricing methods, where transfer price used to be, there's a field on the item of what's the transfer price. Now you can define more flexible transfer price methods. And you can also have the system automatically create your subsidiaries, the representation subsidiaries. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if you use the intercompany management feature of NetSuite, which is basically the ability to, from one subsidiary to buy from another and have that elimination done by NetSuite, the purchase order, sales order, you always have to create a customer that represents that subsidiary and a vendor that represents the subsidiary manually. Now NetSuite's automating that, and you can identify them, with a prefix, the ones that NetSuite creates automatically. So the idea here is, as you create more customers and more intercompany and more subsidiaries, you don't have to keep manually creating these representations. So if I save this now, and if I go to my subsidiaries page, this is getting updated. But if I go to my subsidiaries page here, eventually I'm going to have, maybe some of it will already be created. You're going to have, where is it? The representing vendor and company here, right? So it creates this vendor for you that does that feature of, vendor represents subsidiary one, the company name, and what's the primary subsidiary. So it creates that functionality, automates that for you. So besides that, there are a couple more features here under financial. There's a feature for intercompany netting. So if you have intercompanies do froms, that it shows you what those intercompanies are going to be. You can see the subsidiary one, so it has a payable 1011 from subsidiary 4 and vice versa, subsidiary 4. So you can eventually run a process of netting this you can do a process of netting that. So instead of having to do actual bank transactions and payments, those are eliminated and reconciled and netted automatically by NetSuite, creating in the background the journal entries so that those payables are not reflected in the system. So automating that intercompany. And the last thing that I wanted to point out is this intercompany cross-charge requests. If you want to do cross-charge requests, and what you'll see is if you are in accounting and you're doing your month-end close process, you'll see a new, in the checklist, you'll see a new option called Generate Intercompany Cross Charges. So NetSuite will do that for you automatically as part of your month-end close process, the way it does the elimination of intercompany transactions. It will do that for you, creating those intercompany cross charges, and then obviously then eliminate anything that needs to be eliminated. Coming back to the features here, supply planning. NetSuite, as you know, those of you that have demand planning does the demand forecasting based on history and several models of forecasting, and then based on that it creates the supply forecast, supply plan forecast, so that you can automatically create or have the system suggest purchase orders and when you need to create them based on that future supply, and then you can plan obviously inventory levels, AP, etc. out of that. There's a lot to go into. There's 3 videos about supply planning. There's a lot of improvements that have been done, including a supply planning workbench that allows you to visualize in a much better way what the output of the supply plan is, and do some what-if analysis so that you can make decisions as far as work order creation, purchase order creation, and transfer order creation between your subsidiaries. So all that is, like I said, there's a lot. It's about 3 hours worth of videos that you may want to watch if inventory planning, is still an area that provides you a little bit of a headache and you want to improve on. Next is inbound shipment. Is now included in supply allocation. And if for those of you that know about supply allocation, there is a feature in NetSuite, called supply allocation now, that instead of only committing orders that are created in the system based on inventory you have on hand, and running that commit process, and NetSuite provides you options for commit. Now it's giving you the option of allocate inventory, which if the inventory is on hand is basically the same thing. You're allocating that inventory to an order, like reserving it. But if you don't have the inventory, now NetSuite allows you to create supply rules. And here on order allocation strategies, you can create rules, and those rules can used to be able to include purchase orders. So you could allocate inventory that is in a purchase order or is already in transit into a sales order. That way you're already reserving inventory, and based on that reservation, you know when you're going to be able to fulfill it and improve on your estimated date for your customers, for customer service purposes. Now you can include the inbound shipment functionality, which the inbound shipment is just the ability that NetSuite provides you with a feature that allows you to take multiple purchase orders, combine them into a shipment, and then receive it as one instead of having to receive multiple purchase orders separately. And the inbound shipment has been around for a couple of years now. And it's very useful because if you consolidate purchase orders, or you get a lot of partial purchase orders consolidated by your vendors, you had to receive each purchase order separately in the warehouse. Now you have to create the inbound shipment based on your notices from your vendor, and then the inbound shipment can be received as if it was one purchase order. And what it does, it creates the different receipts for each individual purchase order dynamically by NetSuite, saving you multiple steps. And a couple more here. WMS Telescan. There's a video about Telescan, and Telescan allows you to use, if you have NetSuite WMS, allows you for your shipping and for your picking and your packing processes, allows you to scan back barcodes instead of having to scan the barcode and enter the quantity. So if you're picking 5 of a unit and you want your users to scan each one, instead of scanning one and putting the quantity of 10 and then picking 10 from the bin, you can now direct them by using Telescan to have to scan each barcode as they're picking it from the bin and put it in the cart. And it'll, every time you scan one, it will increase that quantity by 1, or by the unit of measure of the barcode, depending on your configuration. That way you can improve on your accuracy in picking and packing, and that's a new feature that's been called required now for a while. And finally, you can optimize allocation field rates. The different rules that NetSuite provides you for being flexible in how you allocate your inventory. Again, part of the allocation rules. So you want to allocate it, maybe all to one order. Do you want to, if you don't have enough inventory, you want to allocate some to each order, so that if everybody gets something. There's different rules that you can create, and edit. NetSuite will keep adding functionality for those. Moving on to manufacturing, I don't have manufacturing in this account, but NetSuite, just as they did with the intercompany preferences, and NetSuite has created an accounting preferences section for manufacturing here. So if you're manufacturing, you can quickly go to those preferences and update them. It's very useful for manufacturers and administrators in the manufacturing company. And the other one is outsourced manufacturing. And we actually, this is a feature that's been around maybe for a few months now, since release 20.1. But we wanted to call it out here. And it's the ability to optimize the process of creating purchase orders and work orders for your outsourced manufacturing. So if you're a manufacturer, you keep your BOMs in NetSuite, but you don't actually do the work of manufacturing the inventory, you outsource that to a manufacturer and you pay them on a per unit basis for the manufacturing, then it optimizes the creation, completion, transfers of all those work orders and an inventory by using one transaction, which is a purchase order to the vendor that is doing the outsourced manufacturing. So very useful functionality to optimize some steps in your process. Moving on to the platform, there's a lot of improvements in the platform. I won't go into all the scripting, suitelets, web services, and security integrations and improvements. There's probably 40 or 50 of those, but most of the people in this call are not on the technical side, so definitely look into those. But the one that I did want to mention for those of you that are administrators and do delve into scripting is the ability to look at this records catalog. So in the past, if you were a developer and you wanted to look at the fields as you were developing, you had this option of this schema browser, where you had a schema browser, you had a records browser for scripting, a Connect browser for Suite Analytics Connect and any SQL integration, and this analytics browser for the analytics workbook, if you're familiar with all those. But the records browser is where you could look into a specific a field within a specific record and see what the ID was, the label, if it's required or not, and some help about it. So basically, very useful for scripters out there defining whether something is scriptable or not. You would look at here. Now, what NetSuite is doing, it's made it a lot more flexible, and it's within NetSuite. You have this records catalog, and you'll see also one thing to point out is you'll see how the interface is changing a little bit. The look, NetSuite is improving on that, just like you did with analytics workbooks. But you can come here and you can say, for example, if I want to code something for an item, I can see the SuiteScript Analytic API. So what they're doing is that they're exposing the specific browser for your account, not only for the standard one, which is what this was. This is the out of the box, no customization, no specific third-party apps here, no custom fields, nothing else. It's exposing it here, and it can take a while, but it shows you all the fields that you have in your account, and basically the same information that you would have here exposed here. So then you can, you gave me an error here, but you can then, again, optimize, your scripting. You can see here in this simple field, it has, what is it, the name, and it has, if there has any joins to any other field. So very useful for making scripting a lot faster, easier, and defining if something is scriptable or not very, very quickly. A couple things more. Moving on to order management. One of the quick things or very more exciting things is invoice grouping. For those of you that are familiar with consolidated invoicing, we used to be a suite solution. It used to be something that you need to install, and lately NetSuite made it where they had to implement it. What they've come up with now is this invoice grouping functionality, and basically it's what it sounds like is the ability to create invoices, group invoices. So as you know, you have a sales order. A sales order can have multiple invoices, but you cannot take multiple sales orders and group them in one invoice unless you have consolidated invoicing. With the group invoices feature, you can do that now. There's configuration you need to do. You need to define whether a customer, you want that invoice to be grouped or not. And then once you have that process, and this process may be scriptable. I'm not quite honest if it's scriptable or automatable, but if a customer wants you to present one consolidated invoice for a group of invoices that you have, then you can run the process of selecting the invoices. You can filter them by customer, by dates, and define a date for that consolidated invoice. This date will replace the date and the due date of the consolidated invoice. And this transaction that gets created is not GL impacting. It's just like consolidated invoicing was. It's a visual representation of the new invoice, of the invoices, but you can select them. Right now you can have them grouped by PO. NetSuite will add more options to group them here. But you can see here that I have 2 invoices for one customer. They're all matched on these fields. It has to match on the customer, the subsidiary, the currency, the terms, and the PO, if you want to use PO. So it tells you here how many groups you're going to get. I can mark it all and submit it, and what it's going to do is going to run through this process and create a consolidated invoice here. And that consolidated invoice, it has a number. You can give it a number in sequence, just like you can with invoices in the same company auto-generated numbers section of NetSuite. And when you open the invoice, it gives you the detail of what that invoice has, and you can have it summarized. I have 2 invoices here. This is the amount. This is how much it's owed to me. Or I can open it up and show the details of the item within each invoice. And you can customize a PDF and print that and email that to your customer if you want. All this is customizable via advanced PDF. And of course, if you can always then, like anything, payables or receivables, you can then go and accept the payment from here like you would with any other invoice. So that's been something that has been made a lot easier. Couple of other things here. There's now a required deposit workflow feature. So if you have sales orders and you require a deposit for that invoice to be processed or approved, there's a workflow now that you can have that it will know if the sales order has a deposit applied to it before it can be approved for fulfillment. And then, of course, as you know, that deposit gets applied to that invoice or that sales order, to the invoice created from that sales order when that sales order is invoiced. So that is a new feature. There's an installment billing enhancement stack. So if you're using installments, the enhancement here, I thought it was worth mentioning. Before, if you paid an invoice in installments, it always applied it always paid the tax part first, that part of the invoice, and then the actual services or products. Now you have the option of determining whether you want to have it paid tax first or applied to tax first to that line, or pay between tax and your services, right? You can split that. And the last one is, the bill of lading suite app, and there's a bill of lading suite app now that is, bill of lading is something that every customer had to create a custom bill of lading or use a third party to do that. Now you can create the bill of lading directly from the fulfillment, and you can have it print here from the bill of lading. You can see that here, and it's going to print. See if it prints it. Yeah, it'll print a customizable bill of lading that you can again customize, and you will have everything that if you do packing and all that, it would be here. So very, very cool. This is something that most customers had to again customize, do outside the system, or have a third party to do so. I'll skip through a couple of these or quickly. There's advanced functionality for projects. If you use the projects module, there's advanced functionality for project budgeting, and there's a portlets indicator where you can see they're improving you can see in a portlet within the project dashboard whether a project is on time, if you have unbillable expenses that haven't been billed, time that hasn't been invoiced, in a more graphical, more colorful kind of way. And then finally on the features, the vendors and payables on that area, there's a vendor prepayment approval process. As you may know, in the last couple of releases, NetSuite released a prepayment approval process or prepayment process where you can, just like you can do a deposit to a sales order, now you could do a vendor prepayment attached to a purchase order, so that if your vendors require you to give them a payment in advance of shipment or processing the purchase order, you can create that would go to a balance sheet account, obviously from your cash account. And then when that purchase order gets billed, then you have the option of, if your purchase order gets billed, NetSuite would apply that prepayment to the vendor bill. So the reverse process of the sales order. Now you can do a prepayment approval, just like you can do vendor payment approval processes before they actually get printed the check or the ACH gets sent. You can do it for the prepayment process. They've added functionality to add due dates on vendor bill credits. Just like a vendor bill has a due date, if you get a credit, it has a due date, meaning sort of so you know when, from cash flow purposes, if you're going to get a refund or you're going to apply it, then you can match that to your vendor, to your payables. And they've added variance functionality for service and non-inventory items, where before you can only have vendor bill variance accounts and functionality on inventory items. So if you use the option of fulfilling or receiving, in this case, receiving service items to do the accruals, so have NetSuite do accruals for you, then, or non-inventory items as well, where maybe you want to receive your paper for the office in August and get that into the expense, but you don't get the bill until September, you would use that receive functionality and accrual functionality. Now, if there's a difference, it would do that variance for you in those types of items. And finally, last two that I have is there's on the Suite Analytics and mostly Suite Analytics workbook. NetSuite has added a lot of functionality there. They're investing a lot of money there. So if you're using workbooks, and we have a video on workbooks in our series that you can look into, they're adding this Learn About Analytics link here, so you have access to videos directly from NetSuite without having to go to Suite Answers. And I suspect NetSuite is going to do more and more of this directly in the transactions and everything in NetSuite as they keep adding sort of AI to the account. That's one. The other improvement is that it used to be before 20.2 that you could only have one data set. A workbook could only be based on one data set. The data sets, you could still do a lot of joins through the data set, but you can only have one. Now you can create a workbook that is created from multiple data sets. So that gives you even more functionality to be able to do the reporting that you want to do, and add more dashboards, more information, better cross information to your dashboard. And the other thing is I being able to add the table views to the dashboard. So if you use this in your dashboard, you could add you couldn't add tables. You can only add charts and pivot tables. So you can only add this visual kind of representation of the workbook to your actual dashboard report. Now you can add the actual table. So if you wanted this table, just like you do a safe search, you don't want the graphical view, you want the list view, and then filter by it. Like you can here. Now they've added the functionality to add that directly into the dashboard, which gives you a lot more flexibility. And eventually, safe searches may be eventually fully replaced by the workbooks, just because they do have similar functions at the end of the day, but they're adding that so that you can have it in your dashboard. So quickly, just to summarize, the features that sort of the 6 cooler features that we found were that invoice group, the corporate card connectivity, and the auto create transactions from bank import. Those are sort of long overdue features that people have been asking for a long time. The intercompany framework, it does increase the automation of NetSuite for intercompany transactions and intercompany functionality. The record catalog, I think, is a groundbreaking functionality. I know for us consultants and for administrators, it's going to be really cool to be able to see that in one place, and for your account and not for a standard account, so you can see everything in one place and not make assumptions. And then the bill of lading suite app, just because this is again something that has been being asked for a long time. And I would add this to this, that record customization beta as a very cool thing, that it's beta, so it's prone to error, just like the beta tag indicates, but I think it's very cool to be able to continue to customize NetSuite a lot faster than it already is, and it's already pretty fast. As far as notable mentions, that record customization, I just mentioned it. There's a lot of localization enhancements. So if you have operations outside of the US, NetSuite keeps investing heavily in their globalization strategy. So a lot more localization as far as reporting, suite apps, taxing functionality, etc. And suite tax, which is a next generation tax engine from NetSuite, keeps improving. There's still, as of the last release, several things that were not compatible with suite tax. For example, grid order management was not compatible with suite tax. They're working on things like grid order management to be compatible with suite tax in the future. So read a lot about it, but it's at some point you may want to transition from your legacy tax if you're using NetSuite to suite tax, or even from your third-party taxing system to suite tax, because it's going to be a lot more automated than the legacy system that you have within NetSuite right now. And finally, deprecations, to mention things that are going to go away. I mentioned the full access role already. It's inactive already, and it's going to be removed from the account in the new release. The data center specific domains, that's been announced for a while. They're moving to, NetSuite has been moving to your account specific domain here, where you use your account number here and not to a data center specific. And that's part of their strategy to have the information wherever they want and not in a specific data center, as they move more and more into the Oracle cloud. And finally, the NetSuite bundle repository. If you use bundling, you used to be able to put your bundles in the repository and then grab them from there into other accounts. That's NetSuite is changing the way they do bundling and Suite Cloud development. The framework is changing. So next year, it's going to go away. So that means that you won't be able to pull things from the repository. So if you have things there, start reviewing the newest strategies or contact us so that we can help you there to understand how to best use bundling. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time, for your attention today. Hopefully this was useful to you. As I mentioned in the past, we do, besides of implementations and sales of NetSuite, we do support. We offer support packages where we do anything and everything in NetSuite, from creating users to scripting and integrating. So if you have any needs, please contact me. We start our packages as low as 20 hours a year. And my recommendation to all customers is that if you have NetSuite, you should be investing at least 20 hours a year in improving it besides what comes out of the box. So making sure that NetSuite is working fully for you. So contact us if you have any questions about that, and look forward to your participation in our next webinar. We'll send an invite next week. Thank you very much.